Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to take a couple of moments to allow everyone to arrive into the session, but I just want to welcome everyone so far, and thanks for coming early. It's always good to be on time and prompt with these things. What I'll do is I'll walk us through just the agenda while we wait for other people to arrive, and do a bit of housekeeping before we get introduce our speakers and get stuck into it. So very, very, very grateful to have everyone here today to be presenting. I'd like to acknowledge that we are Portable ourselves, our company, and a lot of our individuals are based on Wurundjeri land, and we really want to pay respect and to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And we as a organisation, we're really deeply immersed in, I guess, thinking about making change in communities, and we certainly also want to congratulate. We had our first winner of the Archibald Prize for an Indigenous person in 99 years. So really, really great to acknowledge that in our world. Also want to acknowledge we are working and operating within the context of COVID as well. So you might find during this meeting a youngster or two run into any one of our meeting rooms. Can tend to happen, so please give us the grace of that. Also want to encourage you, all yourselves, to when you do join, if you are just joining now, just announce yourself in the chat, let yourself know, let us know where you're from, and introduce yourself. It's always good to get a sense of where people are coming from. So today, we're going to start with, we're going to introduce the topic, which I'm sure we're all eager to get going on. And then through that, we're basically going to move through a few phases. So the first one, we're going to try and take a design perspective and a lens on the federal budget and the COVID budget. Then we're going to move to talking around technology. And then the final session is around some of the impacts and predictions that are going to happen. After that, we'll have about 15 minutes at around 1:45 to go into the Q&A. So we'll be looking for, feel free to place those questions in the chat. We've got Hayley here who'll be, give us a wave, Hayley. Hayley's who's offering technical support and also managing the chat forum for us, so she can help out. And if you are having technical issues, feel free to reach out to Hayley, and she can help resolve them in the best way that we can. We finish at a hard 2, so if you've got to go, when we imagine everyone does, we're not going to stick around much later than that. It'll be spot on so that you can plan your day. But welcome everyone, really grateful to have you here. So first, I'd want to take a moment to welcome our panelists. The first panelist I'd like to welcome is Carol McKay. Carol is a co-founder of Design Business Council. The Design Business Council provides leadership and insights on design practice through its work, and also publications, which includes the Design Maturity Report. It was released last year. If you haven't had a chance to read it, it's a really great insight into it was a culmination of extensive research to identify, recognise and applaud Australian design mature businesses. So you can find it on the Design Council website, and I'm sure Carol will share her details kindly at the end. She's also the co-author of The Design of Business, and knowing Carol personally, she's one of the most connected advocates of design and design practices in Australia. She's regularly providing community advice and guidance. And we're really, really grateful to have her here today and to offer her perspective. So welcome, Carol.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Simon Goodrich. Simon Goodrich is the co-founder of Portable, which for those of you who are joining us for the very, very first time, Portable is a technology and design company whose main mission is to identify areas of social need and policy failure and bridge the gap using tech and design. Simon's very much at the forefront of this over the past 15 years, leading this mission for the 50 plus individuals who make up our team. He plays an extremely active part to drive change for all the organisations we work with, and also those we don't work with, particularly those working in the technology and legal sectors. He's a fellow of the Sir Zelman Cohen Centre at Victoria University, a leader in legal innovation, and has played an extremely active part in human-centred design, in designing human-centred design programs for the University of Melbourne and QUT. He's the ambassador of the Australian Ambassador of the Webby Awards, the New York-based awards that are the Oscars for online, and also the former president of AMIA, which is, at the time was a peak body for digital in Australia. So welcome, Simon.
Thanks, Andrew.
I'd like to now introduce Sorapul Chanelnis. Thanks, sorry, Sorapul. You got it right. Hopefully, she's the co-founder of Written Recorded, content marketing agency with journalism at its core. They specialize in podcast production, SEO, copywriting, and communications training. Through the craft of storytelling, Written Recorded helps businesses get discovered by humans and search engines. Prior to setting up Written Recorded, Sodipal spent over 20 years in Australia's mainstream media as a journalist, broadcaster, and content creator. She's worked in newspapers, television, radio, and online. She's also been a presenter at events for the Wheeler Centre, the Feminist Writers Festival, and City of Stonington, to name a few. And we love, Simon and I both have a rich background in broadcasting, and we always love to have broadcasters join us and join our ranks as the world has changed. So very, very welcome, Sodipal, and to the rest of our guests.
Thank you for having me.
So we're all here because there was a federal budget a couple of days ago, and I think we're all very familiar with the way in which the budget process typically plays out in the media. There's a focus on tax cuts, and much of the attention looks towards the politics of the day and how that might play out, I guess, in the days and weeks and following. So that I think we're always dealing with that lens as individuals and people when it comes to the budget. But as technology and design companies and practitioners, we actually have a very specific interest in how the budget will affect not only the communities and groups and organisations that are on the end of funding and policy decisions, but how, I guess, us as individuals working in this area, and we don't get a chance to read a lot about that. So we as a group thought we'd come together and have this conversation. How will the budget affect our practice? What opportunities are there for us in the post-COVID world? What problems will we face as a group? Where should we be looking to pivot towards or expand our businesses? They're the main questions. So we're taking that lens to this year's federal budget from that design and technology perspective, and we're going to try and contextualise and also speculate, if you don't mind, on what it means for us to try to leave some of more of the laboured part. We'll try and leave more of the laboured parts of the budget to the side if possible. But we're welcome for you also to join that conversation as well. And again, this is the first time we're running a session like this, so your feedback's very valuable to us, and we'd also like you to join the conversation. So place them in the channel, as I've already mentioned. I'm just going to bring all our wonderful speakers now into the forefront. So give me a second. Great. Here we go. So just to start with, we're going to start, I guess, from a design lens. And Carol, I'd like to start with you. I know you've been following the budget really closely, and we've had a few chats since prior and also to budget night. And I want to get a sense of what your initial thoughts are when it comes to the design community. What did you see that made you think about design businesses and how they might navigate through?
Thanks, Andrew. Look, as a woman who's over 35, luckily I don't have children, so there's obviously big gaps in this budget. But I think from a design perspective and design business perspective, there are areas that we can follow the money. So the government is saying they want a trifecta of confidence. They want consumers to spend, they want businesses to buy and employ, and they want a vaccine. So I need to put the vaccine to one side, but instilling confidence is exactly what designers do. That's what we can do really, really well. So there's two ways of that, two ways we can do that. The first way is that how we work. And remember, it's unprecedented, that word. It's not business as usual. Some designers are not going to return to their studio, back to the studio. They'll continue working from home. And in fact, some businesses are talking about only putting 50% of their workforce back in their businesses. So I think we embrace that it's not business as usual, and we use that to our advantage. On the other side of it is our clients and what they're doing. And a UK survey for the last 6 years has surveyed buyers of design to ask them what they want out of their designers. And DBC has done it for the last 2 years, much smaller, but the results correlate that they're not looking for designers who are just transactional anymore. They want proactive design partners. They want people who will come to them with problem-solving design solutions rather than sit back and wait to be briefed. So if you put all of that together, you've got a government who wants confidence, you've got clients who want designers to be proactive, and you've got the chance to work differently. You know, it's not business as usual. So all of that works really well when we lead into not doing business as usual means designers can look elsewhere for work. So those businesses that are being funded, I would suggest you don't keep knocking at the marketing and comms doors, because it is a recession and budgets are going to be really thin. So a few years ago, the design maturity report that you talked about, Andrew, what that did was look at some research done in 1986 by a dude called Michael Porter. And what Porter found is that businesses that integrated design right throughout the organisation were more successful, they're more sustainable, and they're more financially successful. And this is exactly where designers can look, you know, follow the money where the businesses are going to be funded and look at where design can help. So it's areas like inbound and outbound logistics. When you look at how many businesses have had to move online, that's a great opportunity for designers to redesign products, redesign packaging, make them more efficient to ship, make them lighter. Things like operations, that how a business works, redesigning dashboards, making the financial area more legible for everyone, planning workflows, systems and processes. Service, any new product development involves designers right from the very beginning. Designers can map customer experience. They can help companies get goods and services to business. The infrastructure of the business, you know, the C-suite where it all happens is where the branding and development of any new product happens, and where things like KPIs can be visualized rather than just an Excel spreadsheet. R&D, we've got funding proposals, we've got reports, prototypes, surveys and testing. All of that, it uses design, integrates design. My favorite is probably human resources. All of these, all of the funding that is going to companies for new trainees, everyone needs to be onboarded, everyone needs to be inducted, they all need training programs and ongoing stakeholder relationships and communications is all, you know, within the designer's remit.
I wanted to pick up on that point. I had a question around that. We've got as part of the, there's a $4 billion budget measure to basically allow up to $200 a week for people under the, and you mentioned at the start of your piece there, Carol, that, you know, up to the age of 35. Like, I'm just wondering, like, what you think that's going to mean for, like, particularly if we've got, you know, close to 1 million people unemployed, and, you know, what's going to happen to those people, I guess, like, who are unemployed or graduating? Like, is that going to mean much, do you think, or is it going to have an impact on sort of existing people and trying to look for jobs or move around?
Look, I think it's going to make a huge impact in the training area. That apart from it, one of our philosophies in design is lifelong learning. That none of us can stay still for very long, but bringing in new people into an organisation where already our time and energy is so thin on the ground, that I think that internships and mentoring and traineeships will all need a component of online training. And I think that that's an area where design makes a difference between something being boring to something being creative, really.
What about these? Like earlier before the budget release, there was talk about these 6 priority areas the government believes will be, the future of Australian manufacturing. So there's like 1.5 billion there. Like, I know you've had a look at the areas. Like, how do you think that will play out? Like, is there actually going to be, an impact, or was a lot of it just kind of prior money that was already prior announcements that kind of reshuffled to suit the framing of COVID?
Oh, look, there's always a bit of smoke and mirrors with the budget, but I do think that in the instilling the confidence in the businesses, it's all of these businesses are going to need to look like that they are a stable and confident business that is worthy for consumers to interact with. And I think that relies on customer service, and customer service relies on really good interaction between the vendors, the suppliers, and the consumer. And that communication is something that design works really, really well.
Do you think if we're working in, like, if you've had a whole bunch of design organizations that have been working, like we've heard of colleagues in the sector where, they might have been working for Virgin, or they might have been working for like, a major event that's happening over the summer. All of their work suddenly sort of dry up. Do you think that there is that opportunity, given what Morrison sort of announced, is to move into some of those specific areas like clean energy? Like, do you think that those skills can be tooled and transferred? Or I'm just interested around that.
Absolutely, because the What Clients Want survey that we've just done, when we asked clients what they wanted from designers, it wasn't their folio and it wasn't their existing work that they wanted to see. They wanted to build a relationship with designers who were problem solvers, and they were interested in seeing case studies in aligned industries. So not just case studies of someone who Qantas didn't want to see what someone had done for Virgin.
Yep.
But say in an area like the clean energy, I think coming to clean energy with a case study of how you have communicated or shown something in a similar but aligned client sector would be seen really well. So I think our skills of all of the careers, a skill that a designer has is really transient. And I think that bringing old skills into new areas is a perfect way.
Yeah, I guess that part, given also that, we're seeing universities lose, effectively sort of go back in funding, and it's going to cost you. Tell me, I'm not sure if the panel can just, where do design degrees fit into would they sort of sit under the humanities in terms of like the doubling of, so it's going to be more expensive for you to kind of retransfer or tool up from a university perspective, probably not from a TAFE perspective.
Look, online it says that design degrees are not doubling in price at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I think putting the money into private providers is a really interesting suggestion, because we've not got a great track record of private providers.
No. Yep. No, I hear you. I'm might throw to Simon now to sort of take a bit of a technology lens or get your view. I know you've also been through it. Simon, what did you find? I know you're looking particularly at the R&D tax offset. There's a lot of talk in the tech sector, and prior to that, it's been sort of wound back. So I'm just going to give you a moment to sort of explore what you've seen.
Yeah, I think, thanks, Andrew and Carol. There was a lot of talk from the government prior that there were going to be windbacks to the Research and Development Tax Scheme, or RDTI, or the tax incentives they call it. I think initially people were expecting the government to take out, I think, close to $1.8 billion. And there was a reversal, which the sector overall has been quite happy with, and an additional $2 billion have been put back into research and development. So that view being that you can maintain an offset of 43.5% against any cost that you're doing. And for most businesses, especially small businesses with a taxable rate at the moment, 27.5%, that's seen as like a good outcome. There was also caps that were going to be put in place for the largest amount that you could actually get from research and development, and those have been scrapped too. And it's sort of part of this broader, I think, push towards business as a whole that the Morrison government is putting forward. Another interesting thing that happened prior to the budget were changes to the Export Market Development Grant. So this is a grant that's been in place under all swathes of government for the last 40 years, and it's sort of the main driver that organisations can use to export services. Traditionally, this has been a reimbursement scheme, that they've flipped it now to be more of a grants program, meaning that people will be able to get funding at the outset prior to actually doing the work. In the old days, you needed to spend the money to get the money back. So this is, I guess, another part of the positioning of seeking to push more people to export and go larger in what they're doing.
So what you apply now for with the EDMG grants, you basically apply beforehand and say we're going to spend, as a business, we're going to spend $30,000 to expand overseas, and that's how it works?
Yeah, that's right. That you get the money up front, which gives people a bit more surety. And I think this is coming about, obviously, throughout the pandemic, but the Morrison government was saying that the economy was heading into recession even prior. So sort of one of the shifting changes.
I just want to check quickly, Simon, before we continue, that some people have found, Pally's mentioned that it's hard to hear you. So if you just want to stay close to the mic.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. I'll move a bit closer. Thank you. Yeah, another interesting development is, I guess, the unveiling of the digital business plan, which is spoken about at length, I guess, within the budget papers. So this is about Australia working to become a leading digital economy over the decade, and the government's invested close to $800 million in a new sort of 4-year deal for this, and this is looking to cover off a few things. One of them is to shift towards modern digital infrastructure, reducing regulatory barriers, small and medium enterprise support and capability, and through that a number of initiatives, some we'll mention now, as well as also a digital government that's easy to work with. So I think 14 of the sort of largest federal government agencies have got support for this over that period. Some of this work is in terms of looking to consolidate business registers that are being both at a state moving to a federal level, as well as also helping with part of that broader identification process for MyGov. I think what's interesting is to see that is how much of that will trickle down into small and medium enterprises within the technology space.
That was going to be my question too, Simon. Like, because often we see, you do often hear like, well, we're going to, get rid of red tape and make it easier for businesses. But what does that mean on the end for us? Like, I know from our perspective, we're constantly looking at, how do you make a form better? Or how do you streamline it? But will it actually result in, more businesses being able to get more quickly to market? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, there are some areas where there's investment. 5G is one, cybersecurity and blockchain is sort of mentioned, and this would come about with what's happening through in the sector to do. They're also supporting and expanding a program for just small businesses in general, I guess, in terms of giving them digital solutions. So it's probably less to do, I guess, with technology companies per se, but more, I guess, of a tooling up of what they're hoping to do of the broader economy in general. So to answer your question, Andrew, I guess it's yet to be seen. It's probably worth noting too that the DTA marketplace, which has been probably one of the big cornerstones originally of the Turnbull government, but now shifting into this one around being as, I guess, a clearinghouse for projects. They notched up $2.3 billion of work that has gone through that initiative, and 70% of that has been going to small and medium enterprises over the last 4 years. So there is a lot of talk of that. However, I think there are some broader macro trends where, you look at, Salesforce coming in and doing a lot of the contract tracing that's sort of happening at the moment, or even with a lot of the transitioning within as we've shifted through the pandemic, the likes of Microsoft Teams, Amazon and to a degree Zoom sort of tooling up and working. I think what will be interesting through this process in the wash of how much of this is being identified and used by Australian companies, or what is it actually being brought up with big tech global conglomerates it'll be sort of interesting to see how that sort of plays out over the next little bit. And just
I was going to ask, one of the things, like I was sort of talking about and noting that with the instant asset write-off that the government announced, it's sort of meant to sort of, drive business. We were kind of looking at, well, if you're looking at like digital services, in the old days, you have your servers set up in your building or some weird room, and that would cost you X amount of dollars. Everything's gone to SaaS now. So in terms of like, I think the overheads for technology businesses, unless you're doing hardware, are kind of going to be, you're pretty much claiming that anyway, just in a normal way, the deduction immediately. So I don't really see there being a big driver for tech, and I don't know, Carol, about you for design, like in terms of what kind of maybe 3D printers and whatnot, but I'm not sure how big of a driver of that is for innovation for some of the brands or companies that you're in your suite.
I think. Sorry, can you explain that again? I didn't know.
Oh, yeah. So sorry, just in terms of like the government wants wants all businesses to go out there and spend big chunks of money and write off the tax straight away, and for that to be a big driver of growth. But what I'm saying is like, well, from the tech perspective, like, I don't think there's a big, unless you've got a big piece of hardware that you're doing, like a lot of it's service provision. So that's already tax deductible anyway. So.
Sorry, I understand now.
Yeah.
85% of all design studios are under 5 people, and the majority of those under 3. So, everyone's got a desk, they've got a chair, they've got a computer, but really there's nothing, there's no big things to write up. A lot of the studios in my network that have got a great big chunky photocopier are trying to get rid of it. So no, apart from the fact you need to earn the money first to buy it, that's not an incentive at all.
Right, Simon, I'm sorry I cut you off. So, well, in that question, you want to?
No, I mean, the other thing I think that's interesting coming out now is also looking about digital competitiveness. Sorry, I think I got that right. So CEDA, which is the Committee for the Economic Development Australia, are part of a global index where we're looking about how we're ranking worldwide. So we are ranking at 15. We're, I think, down from 14 as of last year. So that's 15 out of 63 nations. However, it's also worth noting that business efficiency improved in that index. We went up a few places, as did our ranking within technological infrastructure. So it will also be interesting to see, especially as they're shifting in this pandemic year, which obviously is not a national challenge, it's an international one, to see how that will shift and align, and whether there are other things happening within the budget that could be interesting. And look, I'll just, another couple of, I think, insights which I think are interesting to draw attention to. Fintech, which is a sector, especially out of Sydney, which has worked a lot over the last few years to get a foothold within Australia, get some support for an initiative, I think close to $8 million. And there's also a grant program for female-founded startups where businesses can get between a grant, so getting money, not necessarily needing to pay it back, between $25,000 and $480,000 for to expand into domestic and global business, which I think is a good initiative.
Do we know how big the pool of money is for that?
Yeah, the pool of that, I think it is sitting close. Probably I can get the direct figure. It's either 9.6 million or 7.8. I'll find it and put it directly.
So if you're a female founder looking to start up a new business, then it's essentially like a kickstart for that.
Correct.
Fantastic.
Existing, yes.
That's a great initiative. Great. Thanks, Simon. Now I'm going to throw to you, Paul, to just have a look at some of, I guess, from your lens. I think in the pandemic, we saw a lot of, active change in the economy. We're still seeing it. Sleep apnea companies started retooling their to make ventilators. The Treasurer spoke on Tuesday night about, gin distilleries in Tasmania making hand sanitizer and moving that direction. I don't think, that I guess there's changes also that it's happening in the state-based regulation around COVID, that we're going to see out the other side of this as well. So social distancing, and I think that'll require greater reconfigurations of businesses and maybe even some total repurposing. I guess I'm interested to see where you see this playing out in the economy and how you might see design and technology coming or playing a part.
Interesting you mentioned the gin distillery. I'm surprised the Treasurer didn't use the favourite word of the pandemic, pivot.
Oh, yeah.
So I just want to follow up from what Carol was talking about. So, Carol basically said follow the money, and that it's not business as usual, and that we need to essentially think laterally about what we need to do as businesses. So I went and had I'm going to call it a forensic look at the budget to have a look at what some of the opportunities might be for design and tech. And, there's a few opportunities that leap out immediately. And there's three that I sort of bookmarked. One of them is the tourism sector, which you wouldn't think is the obvious one because it's one of the hardest hit areas. And in fact, we've been told that it's likely not to go back to normal for a very, very long time in the absence of, obviously a vaccine. But the government has put to $250 million to the regional tourism package. That's $200 million for boosting infrastructure and $50 million for revitalising businesses in the worst hit areas.
So that $200 million hit then for infrastructure, are we just talking roads and buildings, or do you have any?
So what they're saying is 100 million of that will be dedicated to tourism related infrastructure. So okay. It's not just roads. So it's
a big banana.
We'll see how many big things we can get up in Australia. That's for sure. So here's a few facts that we know already, right? So this week the Age reported, and if you're in Victoria, like all four of us are, we've been in hard lockdown. And Victorians have got cabin fever. They really want to get out. They just, they want to be let loose.
Yeah. Yep.
So there's also anxiety around that. So what we know is that, for instance, the Age reported that the big four holiday parks, the owners have said that the holiday parks have been booked out for the first 3 weeks of January and Christmas already. And we don't even know what our restrictions are going to be. So people have just optimistically gone and booked their holidays. But now the operators are going, how are we going to manage this? Because there's obviously things like shared bathroom facilities, and there's things like, shared indoor games areas. So they're looking at things like restrictions and COVID safe plans. And when I think about it, I think this is a really perfect opportunity for design and tech to solve this problem, because it is a problem that's not going to go away in a blip. We're going to have this problem for a long time in the absence of a vaccine. And also it's a lesson we've learned that, we can have a pandemic, we can have an epidemic, we can have any sorts of things that sort of take us by surprise that we're not prepared for. So being prepared for how do we make holidays safe and take out that anxiety element by using design thinking and technology. And, sort of if you think about it laterally, one idea I thought it was that, when you're at a holiday park, you're in a line when you're trying to go to the bathroom and you're so close to people and you're usually milling around for ages. Why not make that a virtual thing? Why not have like a traffic light system that says, okay, you're third in the queue. Okay, you're next up. You can use the cubicle. You're not in anywhere near people. You could be hiding in your tent, in your cabin, in your caravan, and just make it a safe experience. So that's just, one thought.
Literally, I think there's going to be I think businesses are going to have to think in that way if they're not already, because literally you won't be able to trade and if you're, I guess, if you're looking at, say, the example you give, Circle, that around I think there's a lot of people that would want to go to a crammed-in holiday park somewhere if they don't have the measures in right, and also I'm pretty sure the state in Victoria, for instance, or any state government will be pretty clear about locking down or stamping down on that stuff. So
absolutely,
there's probably a real apparent need for businesses to take that leap in thinking. Or for designers or technologists to lead for them.
And I think that confidence, that's part of the confidence that the government is saying, how can we instill confidence in the consumers and confidence in the businesses? And it's exactly innovations like that, Circle, that would give one business a market edge over another business.
And the issue is going to be compounded more because with our international borders being locked down for quite some time, we don't know. I mean, I think last week they were saying optimistically if we opened at the middle of next year. So we don't even know. We're going to be locked down for quite a long time. So the stats show us that last year, for instance, Aussies took 11 million trips overseas. So if all of those trips are now going to be within Australia, and also we've got that little bubble that's happening as well with New Zealand, remember, where we're creating a travel bubble with New South Wales and NT, and that's launching on October the 16th, so just around the corner. So there's a lot of people who are going to want to travel and they're going to have to do it within Australia. So there's an opportunity there. How do we create contactless experiences when there's this anxiety around it? So with my background, you know, one of the obvious choices is voice technology and creating a contactless experience. So how do we embrace design and tech around voice technology to perhaps, you know, make payments and bookings and checking into rooms all contactless? Or do we look at the environment that we're holidaying in and make that all contactless through voice control again? Do we, you know, turn on the air conditioner? Do we turn on the lights through voice technology? Do we obtain tourist information through voice technology? And the other opportunity around this bucket of money in tourism is that, you know, there's beautiful big land that we've got to discover, so many facts about it that we don't know. So this is a really good opportunity for the design and tech to create online platforms that introduce our country and all of the things that we don't know about it through things like, you know, interactive activities and maps, podcasts and storytelling. So there's like creative opportunities for design and tech as well in tourism, not just around, you know, how do we keep people safe around COVID? And I guess the other thing is in terms of, you know, looking at training, like Simon mentioned the budget around the digital budget, the $800 million budget. So it means that to be able to do these things, businesses do have to then invest in training. And there's an additional $2.5 million, I believe, to support industry-led digital skills through a platform which enables SME workers to basically bone up on their digital skills, so they're upskilling if they don't have that, and then do training around COVID safe practices. So there's all those opportunities around the tourism sector. And there's another bucket of money in the environment, which ties in with the tourism sector. So the environment has put some, the Environment Initiative has put some money aside for ecotourism, for instance. So it all kind of ties nicely together.
Would that be, you mean for obviously internal tourism?
Internal tourism, yeah. So they've got a bucket of money under the banner of environment, and within that, the money doesn't actually, sadly, go to the environment, but it goes to environment-related initiatives like ecotourism, if that makes sense. And the other area that I identified was the supply chain. Now, this is an area that they talked about even before the budget. So the PM's office released a media release, I think a couple of days before the budget, and they said that COVID-19 highlighted the need for us to better understand and address our supply chain issues. And they've put about $107.2 million towards a supply chain resilience initiative. And if we cast our minds back to like the beginning of the pandemic, so the very first thing that we'd all remember was the hoarding of the toilet paper, right? So there was like even a few fisticuffs in the supermarkets. There were social media memes around it. It was kind of funny and tragic all at once.
But yeah.
And you know, the shelves were literally stripped bare, and you couldn't find TP for weeks. And it wasn't only in the initial stages, because like if you think back in June, Woolworths reported that they had to order 650,000 extra packs of rolls of toilet paper. And that's about a third more than normal. And what that showed us was that it was a supply chain issue. And it's because when it comes to toilet paper, there's consumer and there's household supply chain. So the household toilet paper comes in smaller packs, it's scented, whereas the ones that you would find in like restaurants and hotels and all that are thinner and come in huge bulk, and they come off huge pallets. And the funny thing is, you can't just shift that source to Coles and Woolies, for instance, because they come off different paper mills and they have different production standards. So you can't just go, oh, we'll just move that there. So it showed up a lot of sort of issues around how the supply chain works. Obviously, people were using more toilet paper to begin with because they were at home more. And, you know, I'm going to share a fun fact. Apparently, people use about 100 rolls of toilet paper per year. But 400 billion people in the world don't use toilet paper. And we still had this issue of not being able to access toilet paper, not only in Australia, the UK, the US, the Hong Kong. So it wasn't just a weird Aussie phenomenon. And there was also issues around things like, you know, flour and pasta and pharmaceuticals and fresh meat. So the reason I went into a sort of a deep dive around taking us back to the early stages is it is a really good opportunity from a design and tech perspective to go, for the first time in a century, we've got all of this rich data about how people behaved within a pandemic and how consumers reacted to a lack of a particular product that they saw as really vital to their day-to-day life. And so it's a real opportunity to sort of, because supply chains traditionally have been designed around just the product. But what if we flipped that and thought about the user experience? And what if we addressed the user experience through design and technology and looked at this data, looked at user consumer behavior and responded to that and solved that solution? So these are sort of things that I've, you know, identified. Like, for instance, the old people, the elderly, disabled people, they were disadvantaged in this situation. Even when the supermarkets woke up and went, oh, let's make early shopping available for this disadvantaged section of the community, it didn't really solve the problem. So looking at better ways of solving that problem through design and technology.
I think there's something there in that as well, in both those examples, sort of all around, you know, just around the base infrastructure that we're kind of relying upon, and we've sort of seen that tested a lot. But I know, like, for example, in logistics, a lot of the technical infrastructure that companies are sitting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to say the wrong company, like Toll's been hacked twice in the past 12 months, and their whole shipping has been taken offline because of the lack of lack of priority. We've certainly found, on our perspective, from, you know, providing tech services and that sort of baseline infrastructure services to government, a rapid push towards wanting to upgrade sort of base infrastructure in courts. You know, how do we get people who must get into a courtroom or must have that proceeding happen, get in when we've got 30, 40-year-old infrastructure, and also the cultural element of people not being able to, you know, not even used to being telecommuting or, you know, zooming in. So with all this kind of, you know, I do think, and this is sort of like divorced from the federal budget, because I don't think we've seen much money here sort of proportion to that, except for the route would be through an R&D expenditure, where, say, a logistics company might say, well, I'm going to, you know, explore making like a 21st century looking digital platform to track logistics, or use blockchain to better, better allow those movements. You're not really going to see that money coming from anywhere else, yet the demand is still there. We've seen on a state level, money pumping funds into those services, but we haven't, you know, there isn't sort of some national coordinated approach. Carol, you're going to join in?
It's a really good point, Andrew, because at the start of working from home, designers coped really well. That there's not many designers who have not got a home studio, who don't have a little bit of freelancing on the side. even a staff designer. But where many jobs were just paralysed is because the clients were not able to work from home. There were many clients who didn't have a laptop, who didn't have a space from home to work. And so the whole project just stopped. So what we're looking at is a whole lot of businesses that are being funded to do more quickly, but really the fundamental foundation of that business is broken. We've still got internet connections, the NBN's not working in many areas. We've got a lot of clients that are still not able to get back into their offices. And, you know, the businesses, the design studios in our network that are really busy are those that are doing all the COVID communications around lifts, around, you know, social distancing, you know, all of those stakeholder communications, that's all happening. But the whole basis of the business, the businesses is not working.
I wonder also if there will be some sort of, like there was, I think the sentiment around aged care, which I took to read, and if we're talking sort of like an infrastructure problem, I'd say like, you know, aged care sort of revealed a whole series of issues, like around everything from, you know, facilities themselves to the way in which people are paid and how labour is used. I know that the government has basically said, we'll kind of wait, we've already pumped in some money, we're going to give some extra money in certain areas around, you know, continued support, opening bed places, but they're kind of waiting to for the Royal Commission to come out to give more info. It does seem like a bit of a, you know, continued issue around, you know, how do you upgrade those systems? How do you give those businesses or those organisations that uplift so that, you know, like heaven forbid, like, you know, in 10 years time, we have the next kind of sort of wide issue that they can actually respond a bit quicker.
I think the government at the moment with aged care specifically is probably buying time in terms of, you know, they announced the 23,000 home care packages and nothing for sort of aged care specifically at the moment as yet. And I mean, just sort of thinking about it from some of the horrors that we've seen of what's happened in aged care, I think that the thinking would be until the Royal Commission is sorted, that they keep as many old people at home as possible safely, rather than putting more into a system that is obviously broken without finding the solutions around it.
Good point, exactly. We've got about 12 minutes left, and I might throw to Hayley now to who's been watching and I know responding to a few of you and helping you out in the chat. Do you want to bring forward a few of the questions you've seen there, Hayley, for us to look at?
Yeah, of course. Amazing chat, everyone. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, so there's one here. Simon, this could be maybe directed at you first, but anyone is more than welcome to jump in. And just saying that there seems to be a fair bit of the budget about design for commerce. And is there anything around design for social innovation that could kind of speak to your R&D pieces, Simon?
Look, there's been, I think as we were talking to, there's been some movements within aged care, but I don't envisage that they're, as we're putting forward, particularly different because of where we are, I guess, in the cycle of commissions and so forth. Within mental health, which I think that was identified as an area, I think there are starting to be some interesting areas. So there's obviously there was a big ticket item of giving more access to mental health sessions as part of, I guess, Medicare that they extended in Victoria to looking out further. But also within the detail, there is support going to a lot of those organisations of a more coordinated and better way of communicating, which I think could be quite interesting. And there's even tying that into a bit of supporting mental health around NDIS as an example too, which is good. I think, you know, from our experience in working with orgs, sometimes these initiatives are coming from the organisations, and there's many instances you also having where the government's telling organisations this is what we're seeking to do. So we're interested to see how this plays out over the next sort of 6 months or so in terms of where that will lead to opportunities for social innovation, both for the sector but for people more broadly.
Yeah, I think I'll add that I think, in terms of like specifically if you're a social innovation sort of company working with that setup and space, there doesn't seem to be anything specifically there, but you're probably likely to have to be following the, as Simon said, like the flow on as other businesses would to seek out those opportunities or to reach them, unless of course you're planning to start a if you're a female founder and looking to start a social innovation, which I'd encourage anyone who's watching to do. I think it's a great space. We love that space, and I think we need more people working on it. So.
Yeah, great. There's another piece here kind of, I guess, around like regardless of business investments, but can anyone here see the opportunity for digital services to invest in accessibility a bit more, and particularly in the present, rather than kind of pushing that to the future and saying like, I'll get to that later?
I'm taking this is from there's the broad meaning of accessibility, not just like digital accessible platforms, but digital, or is it specifically? Sorry, I'm going to find the question.
So it's in the chat, and it's by Danica. It just has accessibility in general. So maybe answer how you feel most comfortable.
Sure. Does anyone else want to have a crack?
It's a toughie. I think that I think it's one of those areas where businesses that integrate design right throughout the whole business, accessibility will become part of their business in every area, in the services area, in the infrastructure area, and in the human resources area, absolutely. And I don't think that's happening at the moment. I don't know any businesses that are taking that focus at the moment. There seems to be so many things that are broken, and the communication, the IT communication with everyone remote working has been a real positive for some with this accessibility, but with others it's been as much of a hurdle.
Yeah, if I can, do you want to jump in?
I was just going to add to that, is that if you do go down that track to get accessibility right, I think you really need to include the lived experience of people who have the challenges of accessibility, because I think we get it wrong by sweeping in as experts without really understanding what their individual challenges are. We do it for a lot of things that require accessibility, and to kind of come with that lens is really important.
Yeah, from a digital services perspective, like we're often, and we're extreme advocates of putting accessibility at the full end spectrum of design, so that we get so our projects it's considered. There's not always that consideration from the client, and we have to take people on a journey with that. But I think from a budget perspective, we've got a further commitment to NDIS. And more service providers are going to have to be, attracting clients that may have and who do have, accessibility is a major issue for people in this very area. Our hope is that funds will it will become more of a status quo, or lifting all the boats at the same time around that. So I'm not sure if we've covered the answer off well enough, but I think there's.
Can I just, Andrew, just on that, it just occurred to me an example of actually using some of the bucket of money, like Simon mentioned, mental health. And one of the things that we know around mental health statistics is people who come from a COLD background, culturally, linguistically diverse people, have real challenges around accessing mental health programs because of cultural issues. It's awkward, it's embarrassing, like a whole myriad of issues. And the existing services don't really hit the nail on the head. So that's sort of tying that all together beautifully if you are looking through that lens, because there is money in that area.
Yeah, particularly in psychology, there's a lot more work around making sure that psychology is, diverse. Generically, it is just like very Western. So there's definitely pieces around that which does then impact accessibility as well.
To just follow, I saw your further follow-up there, Danica, just as a follow-up. The answer is no. So there aren't any provisions, because it wouldn't be seen as an asset. It's already fully tax deductible if someone were to basically invest in that. If they invest in, say, like an accessibility project on top of their existing build, you just be writing it off in the same way as you usually would at 100%.
Awesome. Oh, sorry, things coming through. Just a question from Zane asking, do we think that this budget recognises the potential of design for social innovation? Or is it just kind of like not really hitting the mark in that regard? This last
Look, I think this is the type of government that social innovation probably isn't in their sort of lexicon. I think if there's something that we could make of it there, yes. But no, I don't think it's a key derivative of what they're seeking. Doesn't mean that it can't be made into it or creating it through other avenues, but I don't believe it's a core focus.
I see another thing in there, Hayley, from Kellyanne earlier on around, I wonder how we as more established, higher paid designers can send the elevator down to emerging and graduating designers, conscious that while some of us can survive and thrive on part-time salaries, new designers often cannot. Carol, do you have any thoughts there?
It's something close to my heart. One of my hats is as being a member of a change management committee for paid internships, because the design community is not great at paying young people for their internships. So it is a problem that the universities are churning out more designers than there are jobs for, which means that many young designers are forced to start up a business without actually learning on the job. They're learning external. So one of the things that, I think that on a social level, if every senior designer took a younger designer under their wing as a mentor, an unpaid mentor, would be lifting the whole industry up one notch. For those of us that do have a business, paid internships, there's a strong business case for how you can help someone young be part of your organisation, even on the minimum wage. They can get experience, and then you can get a return on investment and give back to the organisation.
Carol, I'm wondering if you know whether or not any sort of the design field is wrapped up in apprenticeships and training. Like we certainly have never kind of gone down that space, but I don't. Is that the case or?
No, there's no alliance that I know of. Like Interns Australia is not working in that way, and the TAFE colleges aren't working in that way. But I think there's a real opportunity there for a traineeship or a cadetship that minds the gap between university and design job. That many design employers are complaining that university churns out students that aren't job ready, but there's no adhesive to glue the two together. So, my direction is the paid internship becoming it's a 3-month or 6-month cadetship. It's not 1 week. It's not, even 3 weeks. It's 3 months or 6 months. You come in on a minimum wage, and it's a cadetship where you get to experience a full rotation of a project within an organisation. It's very doable, and even more doable remote working. I think we'll have our processes and our running sheet published soon. So if all design businesses took that on, and on an individual level we took on a mentorship, I think we could collectively help the young graduates.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave us at, Carol. I want to thank everyone for attending and being part of this today. Thanks, Carol, Simon, Sertical, and Hayley as well in the background for helping us. You can catch this and other events. There'll be a recording of this on portable.com.au in the event section, so you can take it there and share it on with friends, and we will follow up. Feel free to reach out to any of our panelists as well if you want their further thoughts or perspectives, or even just, I'm sure they're pretty welcome to tap on the shoulder. I think LinkedIn's probably the best place to just reach out and say, hey, I watched your event the other day and it was nice to hear from you. Can I ask a question? So yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll catch you at the next portal event, and I'll see all the panelists in the green room afterwards. So.